Hey everyone, and thanks for tuning in to SASART. My name is Savannah, and today we're going to be going over how to do an acrylic abstract flower eye. For anyone who is new to my channel and to Skillshare here, I am a freehand self-taught artist that's located in central Alberta, Stettler, and I love to dabble in any medium I can get my hands on, whether it's acrylic, watercolor, oil paintings, illustrations, and I absolutely love to do scenery pieces, so you'll probably see a lot more scenery as my classes progress. So make sure to tune in. It's really easy, simple steps. Anyone can do it, whether you're a beginner or an advanced person. So make sure to check out the steps and the materials, and I'll make it really easy for you guys to create your own abstract flower eye piece. The first thing that you're going to want to do is start with the base of your eye. Now, whenever I am drawing an eye, I always think of it as if you were drawing a lemon or a V that connects to another V that's laying on its side with a bit of a curve to it. So you practice doing your different styles of eyes, and if you need to, you can always pencil this out first. For me, I'm freehand, so I'm pretty used to just drawing an eye and going with it. But for any of those who need to take some time first to draft it out, by all means make sure you do that. But here I'm just taking some purple paint and I'm just quickly doing the outline. And once I've got that lemon shape on, then after that I'm going to do a circle right in the middle of that. So I'll do, if you were drafting it out in pencil, you could do a full circle and just erase the edges that go outside of your lemon shape. And once you have that main circle on, you're going to want to do another circle on the inner portion of the eye. This is going to make up our iris. So here I'm just taking more of the same purple paint and just quickly getting it in there. And with acrylics, you don't need to worry too much if you mess up. You can always take some white and fix it if you painted over a spot that you didn't want to. And once I've got those layers on, I take my light pink and I start to just shade in that main part of the eye. And I'm going to shade it all the way in full pink. And it's okay if it blends a little bit with your purple if it's a little bit wet still from continuing on in the steps. That works just fine for what we're going to be doing because we're going to want to blend and do a gradient. So I didn't even clean my paintbrush. I just continued on and let the colors mix together. And once you've got that done, the next step is going to be taking your plum color and just going around that outer circle ring. And I'm not filling it all the way in. I'm just going to do about half of it filled in with that color. And I don't use too much paint or too little. I kind of do a mix. And I will also add a little bit of my regular purple into it. And once you've got that base on, then you're going to want to add your light pink once you've cleaned your paintbrush, and you'll start to blend those colors together. And we're going to want to fully blend it so that it gives a gradient. So for anyone starting with your light pink, I would suggest doing the ring closest where there isn't your plum or purple color yet, and starting to pull the paint into those two colors and mix them together. And that'll help to create a gradient look. And you can kind of see me going back and forth between the two colors. I do clean my brush in between this process if I need. And if you do get it too dark of a color, you can always go back in and you can add more light pink to it to make it a bit lighter. Once you have your eye to the gradient that you're happy with, doesn't matter what colors you're using, it's just however you want to create it. So even if you're not using purples or pinks, make sure that you continue along with the gradient idea. But now I'm going to take my darker purple and we're going to start to do the outlines of the flower petals on the inner eye. And I chose round petals just because it's easy to make and they're quick to do. And I'm taking that purple and I'm just lining them. So I'm going over that gradient and I'm just gently putting in some light petals. And I'm going to do this all the way along. For some of this video, I will be doing it in regular time, and I will speed it up in parts just because once you have the idea of one, that's the same pattern that you're going to use all the way along. So make sure to take your time. And again, if you need to pencil this out first, do that as well. And if you need to practice first on a piece of paper, do that also. But that's the technique that I'm using. And I'm filling in that dark purple wherever the petals don't meet the circle on the outside. And I'm going to take that purple and line the inner and outer circle as well. And you'll start to see flowers forming on the inner eye. Once you have your purple outline on, the next step is going to be making some of the three-dimensional shape to the petals. So I'm going to be taking some of my dark purple and just doing some little ticks on the inner part of the circle and down into the flower petals. And I also take some plum color as well, and you can see I go in and I'm just kind of pulling the paint from the inner circle out and not taking it all the way to the ends of the flower petals. This will start to give it the illusion of a 3D look to it. So I'm just going along and with my liner brush, just gently adding in some little marks here and there to help give that flower some dimension. And then I'm taking my dark purple and again lining where I need to. And once you have that step done, then I take my dark purple again and I do two smaller circles on the inner portion of the eye where we haven't done anything other than the gradient yet. So I'm just taking my purple and I'm making a little tiny circle within the circles and blending that out a little bit. And if you do add too much purple, you can always go back in with your light pink and blend that out to make it a little bit lighter again if you mess up or make a mistake. And sometimes I even add flower petals to those inner little circles. And once you've done that, then the next step will be taking your light pink and going right on top of the dark purple and plum on those flower petals and just adding a little bit more highlight to them. And that will help again to give it even more of a 3D look to it. I'm going to do this all the way along, and wherever the light is hitting or where you choose the light source to be, make sure that the light is going to hit in the same spot. So if your light source is on the right side, make sure that your highlights are on the right. For me, I chose for my light source to kind of be above the flower eye that I'm creating. So you can see the highlights are hitting right on the tops of the petals, and where they go up the sides of the circle of the eye, then they're going along the tops of those flower petals. Once you're happy with the gradient of your flower eye so far and the petals within, I usually go back in once more and I take that purple and line the outer circle and the petals wherever I need. And then I take my plum and I use that to align the outside of the eye and the ridges where I feel it stands out the best. This is a nice way to do a defined look without actually using any black or white in the mix. So once you have that outlined, the next step is going to be adding in your flower petals on the outer eye. And these are going to be our eyelashes of the eye. So whatever kind of flower petals you want to use, you don't have to follow right along to mine. If you have daisies or rose petals or another kind of flower that you want to use as your reference, by all means, make sure to make it your own painting. And if you want to follow step by step, I'd love to see whatever you guys create, regardless of what kind of flowers you use, what colors you use. Everyone can make a really interesting, unique painting just off of following along to these steps. So I'm going to do this all the way along the bottom. And once we've got that in, then I'll go on to the next step, which is the shading and gradient. Again, kind of the same way as the inner flower petals. I started to line the top upper part of the eyelashes with flower petals, and I realized my paint was still a little bit too wet. So I went back to the bottom petals and I'm going to start doing some of the shading and gradient while that top part of the eye dries. So I went in with my dark purple first and lined, and now I'm using my plum color and I'm starting to just shade in some of that detailing that's on that bottom ridge of the eye. And using a bit of light pink, I'm blending that dark plum color out into a softer pastel color. And for some of this, I'm going to speed it up again because it's going to be the same process all the way along. But the idea here is to create a gradient again, and using the dark purple on the bottom edges of the eye flower petals, we're going to blend the colors back up into it. And don't worry too much if your blending and gradient isn't the exact same in the entirety of every petal. That's okay. You can see with mine that I do not have the exact same color palette on every single petal. There's kind of a variant, and if you look at flowers in nature, they're not going to all be the exact same colors, and different hues of light and shades of color will appear when you're looking at the flowers. And in this case, especially since we're doing an abstract design, a little bit of variance is completely fine, especially when you're just starting out. And if you're practicing or if you're new to this, don't get too frustrated. It takes a long time to get a perfect gradient all the way along. So play with it and enjoy yourself, and don't worry too much if it's not the exact same. Once you have your base petal gradient in, the next step that you're going to want to do is go back in with your purple again, and we're going to start outlining some of those petals. And I know that we did do a bit of a plum outline, but that was just to give us a guideline. Now I'm taking that purple and I'm going in, and wherever I feel like shadows may be hitting, I'm taking that dark purple and I'm just gently blending into the flower petals a little bit more. And that's going to really make the colors stand out. And you'll see that I'm kind of doing it on the right side only of the petals. And again with that liner brush, and I'm just gently blending it out. Not a whole lot of paint on the paintbrush. I'm just allowing it to mix with those light purples and plum colors that are already in there from the gradient that we made. So I'm going to do this to every single petal again. So I'll speed it up once more. I'm also going along and I'm adding in some of that plum color wherever I see or feel that a indent for the flower petals may be. I'm adding a couple streaks here and there right into the inner portion of the petals. And you can see I did that as well to every single petal as I went along. Once you're happy with your blending and your gradient and you've done your steps of purple on the right sides of your flower petals or wherever your light source may be, the next step would be to take your light pink, and again, the same way as you did with those inner petals on the eye, we're going to take the light pink and we're going to go right along the ridge of where the eyelashes start, and we're going to do some streaks of white through each petal. And it's just taking the liner brush and starting at the top, and with just a little bit of paint on the end of it, I usually take it and I'll press fairly hard and then lightly pull away, and that will help to spread the paint as you go, and it'll give it a nice little effect. And with that same liner brush, I'm going to go back in with my dark plum color, and now I'm just going to line the outside of each flower petal the same way that we did with the inner petals of the eye. Now that we've done our bottom eyelashes, we're going to do the top ones. And you can use the exact same method as what you used on the bottom ones, or you can follow along to this part and you can do them the way that I am. And I decided to include both ways of doing it because not everybody paints the same. And for me, I like to use this technique because it's quick and easy, and I kind of blend and highlight and shade as I go. In this case, I'm laying down my plum color first and then adding my light pink into it. And then as I go, adding that purple into the tips and where I feel like a purple shade should go. And I'm going to do this all the way along. This is a method that I prefer just because I'm so used to painting with different mediums and freehanding as I go. But by all means, do your outline first or draw it in pencil and keep practicing. And if you're using different colors, it's kind of the same principle no matter what colors you use, just the blending and the gradient as you go, and remembering where your shadows and highlighting are going to be. The final steps of the upper eyelashes is going to be the same as the bottom, and that's taking your dark plum color and outlining wherever you see fit. And you'll notice that as I go along, I am darkening the tips of the flower petals, and I find that this helps just give a extra aspect of dimension to the painting. And while I'm at it, I'm also going to add in our light pink and plum colors and purples with the same streaking kind of 3D look as the bottom petals have. So you'll see towards the end all of the different details that add up together. And it's quite a simple process, and it looks a little bit more complicated than what it is, but it's really not a whole lot of steps to it. It's just a matter of swapping between your different paints and using that dark plum to really outline and highlight. Now that we have your base abstract flower eye on, I'm going to work on two leaves that I decided to add with this. Now with this project, I am actually going to be making this into an abstract leaf eye person. So I plan on making a woman that's made of flowers and leaves out of this painting. So this is just the base design, but here I'm taking bright mint and olive green, and I'm starting to create some of the leaf that I will be putting underneath of it. And I'll probably be using this technique through most of the rest of this painting whenever I finish making it. And here I'm just kind of roughly outlining where I want my leaf to be in that bright mint color. And I haven't put an outline on it, but for those of you who aren't sure or you don't know exactly where your leaf is going to be, you can always draw it out in your pencil first again, or do a rough draft, or lightly paint it out in whatever color you want and then fill it in. And sorry if some of the footage in this one gets a little bit cut. I accidentally was in front of my camera here and there, so bear with me as I'm getting used to editing and cutting my videos together. Once you've decided where your leaf is going to go and you have your mint green filled in, next I'm going to take an olive green and I'm going to do a line right down the center of the leaf. And if you want to curve it or if you want it to be a completely straight leaf, however you want to make it. But what I like to do is I like to kind of make them curvy, and I'm not really following a true leaf design. I'm kind of making up my own as I go, but you'll notice it looks very similar to how I paint my flower petals. And with this technique, I usually do it right when the mint green is still wet. And I add my olive green in, and as I go, it blends together. And you'll notice that it's kind of like an elongated S pattern that starts to go thinner, and the tips of the leaves go towards that point of the leaf when you are creating your leaf pattern. And there's no right or wrong here, so do whatever you feel looks best. And again, if you need to draft or if you need to practice it first, by all means, do whatever you need to do to make it work for your painting. And always remember that acrylics you can go back over, you can repaint. If you made something too dark or too light, you can add to it. So don't stress too much and just keep trying. And even if you don't like it at the moment, the more that you add to it and the more detailing, the more that it will grow on you. And you may find where you might not have liked your painting at one point, you may really like it by the end result. It's all about the process. For the second leaf pattern, I decided to do another technique, kind of the same way that I showed you guys with the eyelashes made of flower petals. And this time I started with the outline. I used my olive green first, and making an elongated S, I started at that side of the leaf first. And from there, I did a half circle on the other side. And that's the basis to my leaf. Once I had that in, I then went in and I followed that same S pattern and did a line right up the middle. And again, I'm still using my liner brush. After that, I added in my ribbing pattern for my leaf and making sure that all of the tips and edges went towards that main tip of the leaf. And I just find that it gives something for the eye to look at. It's not all straight lines, it's all different patterns and designs. And I think it adds a different element to your painting when you add curves and S's and different shapes like that throughout. And once I had that on, I then went in with my mint green and I started to fill in those gaps. And I wasn't too worried about filling it in all the way because I'm going back in with my olive green and continuing to do that shading and kind of keeping that same idea with the gradient, having the dark olive green on top, fading down into the mint green. And when it gets closer to the flower petals, I would then make it a little bit darker as it'll be more shadowed from the flower petals being in front of it. All that's left now is any final detailing and highlighting that you want to add. Make sure to comment and share your work. And if any of you followed along and you have any questions, or if I missed going over anything, please make sure to comment and I will do my best to keep up with anyone who has any feedback or questions in regards to this class today. So I hope you enjoyed, and hopefully it wasn't too terrible of a compilation. I'm still very new to Skillshare and to editing, and I'm still learning a lot about my software and lighting and filming. So hopefully this was a good little run through, and I will be posting up more. And if you guys have anything that you'd like to learn, or if you've seen one of my pictures in the beginning and you'd like to learn a little bit about it, make sure to comment about that as well. And I will make sure to come up with some different classes for you guys. Thanks.